At the confluence of the Alabama and Cahaba Rivers, there is a town that refused to die quietly. Old Cahawba, founded in 1819 as Alabama's first state capital, was once a place of ambition, politics, and promise. Today, it is something else entirely, a ghost town. But beneath the ruins, beneath the flood soaked soil and forgotten streets, lies a history marked by war, disease, tragedy, and stories that refuse to stay buried. Join us under the Ode South Moon as we explore the haunted history of Old Cahaba, Alabama's capital of the dead. In 1819, the newly admitted state of Alabama selected Cahaba as its first capital. Its location, at the meeting of two major rivers, made it ideal for commerce. Alabama's first governor, William White Bibb, selected the site personally, citing its central location and river access. The town was laid out quickly. Streets, government buildings, and residences constructed atop land that had long been occupied by Native American settlements. In fact, the name Cahaba is thought to come from the Choctaw words Oka, meaning water, and Aba, meaning above. Ironically enough, it would be Cahaba's inability to remain above water that eventually became its demise. Cahaba flooded, frequently. Seasonal rains swelled the rivers and turned the streets into waterways. Disease followed, malaria, yellow fever, thriving in the low, swampy terrain. The town carried a reputation for having an unhealthy atmosphere. By 1826, just 7 years after its founding, the capital was moved to Tuscaloosa. Despite losing its status as capital, Cahaba did not disappear. Instead, it transformed into the hub of commerce that Governor Bibb had originally envisioned. By the 1830s and 1840s, it became one of the wealthiest towns in Alabama. Its prosperity built on cotton and the forced labor of enslaved people. Its location, once a liability, became an asset for trade. Cotton grown across Alabama's Black Belt moved through Cahaba's warehouses and onto riverboats bound for Mobile. Railroad connections created a building boom, and in 1854, famed architect Richard Upjohn would design the St. Luke's Episcopal Church, a marvel of architecture in Gothic revival style that stands today. But beneath that prosperity, there was tension, because Cahaba's success depended on a system that would soon tear the nation apart. In 1863, during the Civil War, Cahaba became something darker, a Confederate prison camp. Union soldiers captured and transported south were held here in overcrowded conditions. Castle Morgan, as it was known, housed some 3,000 prisoners in the cramped confines of a 200 by 125-foot converted cotton warehouse. Floodwaters often rose through the camp, leaving prisoners standing in water for days. Disease spread rapidly, and while mortality rates here were lower than at other Confederate camps, the conditions left a lasting mark on those who survived and on the place itself. Men died here, and many were buried nearby, in ground that would not remain quiet. In April of 1865, as the Civil War came to an end, Union prisoners were released from Cahaba and transferred to Camp Fisk in Vicksburg, Mississippi with the promise of parole. Many of them boarded a steamboat on the Mississippi River, the Sultana. On April 27, 1865, the Sultana, extremely overloaded with both passengers and cargo, exploded near Memphis, Tennessee. An estimated 1,800 people died. It remains the deadliest maritime disaster in American history. Many of the men who perished had just survived the squalid confines of Cahaba. They escaped one nightmare, only to be consumed by another. After the war, Cahaba briefly served as a center for freed men, formerly enslaved people building new lives during Reconstruction. But the town could not sustain itself. The flooding continued, railroads relocated, businesses left, and the residents followed. By 1900, Cahaba was effectively abandoned. The buildings were dismantled, materials were carried off to rebuild nearby Selma, streets disappeared beneath grass and silt. What remained was memory. And something else. Cahaba today is preserved as an archaeological site, but alongside its documented history, there exists another layer, one shaped by memory, folklore, and repeated accounts of unexplained phenomena. Among the most infamous reports is the specter in the maze, a luminous orb often sighted floating through the now lost garden maze of the home of C.C. Pegas. Once occupying a lot between Pine and Chestnut Streets, the home and its garden have been consumed by the land, but the specter persists. Visitors and guides have also described sounds, footsteps, voices, often associated with the former prison site. The area continues to exude a feeling of despair, hopelessness, and dread. Other stories speak of lost burials and restless ground. Lost cemeteries connected to the prison camp, where Union soldiers who died in captivity were laid to rest for a time before being relocated to their home states. Most of them, anyway. The Saltmarsh gravestones, preserved behind the visitor center, are the remains of a family cemetery dislocated during a flood. The actual location of the graveyard has yet to be found. Within the boundaries of Old Cahawba, there are several known burial grounds. Each one holds a different piece of the town's story. The primary burial site, often referred to as the New Cemetery, contains graves dating back to the early 1850s. Here lie settlers, politicians, and victims of disease. Unmarked graves are common, and incomplete records coupled with decades of vandalism have erased others. Local folklore speaks of ghostly figures that roam the grounds at dusk and disembodied voices that whisper among the trees. Stranger still are the tales of the Wampus Cat. Locals claim the cryptid prowls the boundaries of the cemetery, its cries audible for miles on moonless nights. Nearby are burial grounds tied to enslaved individuals, largely unmarked, their presence acknowledged more by absence than inscription. Today, the cemetery consists of a handful of weathered headstones that seem to appear randomly along the outskirts of a pecan grove. Some say the area is unnaturally quiet, but surprisingly peaceful and calming. And then there is the lonely grave of Mary Eliza Perrin. Her family was among the first to settle in Cahaba and would eventually build a successful mercantile business. Mary died in childbirth in 1838 and was laid to rest on the grounds of the family home. In 1857, her husband would purchase a large factory on Vine Street and convert it into the grandest mansion in Old Cahaba. The mansion utilized a 900-foot deep artesian well and a series of metal pipes to cool the mansion in the summer, making it the first air-conditioned home in Alabama. By 1894, the mansion was gone, carried away brick by brick to build other structures. Today, only the well remains. Old Cahaba is not just a ghost town. It is a convergence of histories. A failed capital, a center of wealth built on suffering, a prison, a place touched indirectly by one of the greatest maritime disasters in American history, and a landscape filled with graves, many unnamed. Places like this do not simply disappear. They linger in the land, in the stories, and perhaps in ways we don't fully understand. Cahaba's story is not unique in its rise, nor in its decline, but few places preserve both so completely. Here are the ambitions of a young state, the realities of war, and the consequences of geography remain visible, not reconstructed, not reimagined, but left as they were, and in that stillness, Cahaba endures. Old Cahaba is quiet now, but places like this don't simply fade. They linger in the land and in the stories left behind. If you enjoyed this look into haunted history, be sure to like and subscribe for more, because there's always another story waiting under the Old South Moon.